Please allow me to introduce Dr. Mark Copland, the chairman of this session, before we proceed. Dr. Mark Copland is the Executive Officer for the Social Justice Commission for the Catholic Diocese of Toowoomba. Mark has worked as a teacher and historian in Queensland and Western Australia. His PhD topic was a history of the forced removal of Aboriginal people in Queensland between 1859 and 1972. He was a founding member of Toowoomba Refugee and Migrant Support Service, TRAMS, and has worked collaboratively with a number of government and non-government bodies promoting human rights and honouring cultural diversity. Mark has served as a member of the Australian Catholic Social Justice Council for 8 years and is currently working with Bishop McGuckin, with Bishop McGuckin's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander reference group to develop Reconciliation Action Plan for the Toowoomba Diocese. He has worked for justice and peace in partnership with people from a range of faith backgrounds over the past decade. Now, may I invite Dr. Mark Copland and our two speakers, Ms. Sophie Ryan and Mr. Mark Cecil, to come to the stage for question and answer.
A little while for questions. So I just had a couple of reflections, and then we might, and I've got my own questions, but I'm sure you've got plenty too. The first one, something happened to me on Wednesday. For the very first time, I ventured into the world of Facebook, and I created a Facebook. And at the moment, I think I want all of you to like me, but I'm not sure if I want you to be my friends. And just, I might actually bounce back off Mark's wonderful presentation first, and then a few thoughts on Sophie's.
I guess the bounce off of that, clearly Sophie talked about the importance of silence, and then Mark had that whole challenge, and Sophie also, with so much chatter, with 24-hour news cycles, with Twitter, with Facebook, with all the emails. People can contact us, we communicate in so many ways. So that whole challenge of finding silence. Going to Sophie, so part of that, one question I'd sort of like to throw out there, where are there places for silence in our community? Where is there actually a place where we can have that important reflection? With that pathway that Sophie was talking about, if things stop with prayer, is that okay? So that's another question I'm just going to throw out there. The other fantastic, you can't make a difference. So what makes us think that we can't make a difference? That challenge, whether we can or we can't. And there was on Tuesday night on local ABC radio, there's this fantastic little segment, Letters of Note. And there was a letter from Mahatma Gandhi from September 1939. And the letter was from Gandhi to Hitler. And he was asking him, and he started, "Dear friend," and he was asking him, to pull back before the Second World War. And I guess in one sense, what a fantastic starfish. Like that, what a moment where he thought he could make that difference. He was getting that starfish and throwing it back into the sea. He thought he could do that. So I guess, and then Mark had that challenge for, we're hearing from young people, all of us, what is that? Is peace that idealistic island, or what's it actually mean? And we heard that phrase, Mark, and the respondents kicked around a lot. It's about getting along. So what does that mean, getting along? And then I thought Mark had a really, it was a little side comment that I'd like to explore as well. Is peace a lack of conflict? Or is there conflict that's needed to create peace? And is that part of that dialogue? And the last one before I, and so these good people can respond, but I'll open it up to the floor, and if they don't, they can come back to some of my questions. The last one was pain and crisis. And we heard, you know, the floods here in Toowoomba, but at times of pain and crisis, harmony seems to come. And I mean, so, you know, during the wars, the churches are full. When there are real issues, people forget the differences. All the strands become one seamless garment, as Sophie was talking. Well, how do we get that action without the pain and the crisis? Is there a way of doing that? So I've thrown out about 62 questions. Does anybody in the audience have one, please?
For those who don't know me, my name is Rachel Akers, Wiccan General Rat Bag, and please don't throw any fruit at me. I was listening, this is the second time I've heard Sophie talk, absolutely brilliant, and I'd love to see what you're going to do in 10 years' time. I found fascinating your comment about that people see through their own experiences. And I find that rather ironic when looking at the video about people who are thinking about we having social cohesion, and I'm concerned about complacency, that people think that we are a socially coherent society, not seeing the subtle forms of discrimination that we have in the society, and think that we are all okay, we don't need these type of forums. Now, as someone who does a lot of volunteer work, as someone who's tried to find a job herself, I've seen all ranges of very subtle put down, subtle forms of discrimination, applying for jobs and you have to send a photograph so they can easily cut out people who don't look the way they want to look, and subtle things like that. And it's a big concern if the youth think that we are just falling into this trap of complacency. Do either of you have any idea of how we can deal with this? Thank you.
As I mentioned, and it's a fair point. I think it's very easy to stand here at this type of forum and say that we're socially cohesive. And on the outset, I think Sarita said it in her message that on face value, it's very easy to see Toowoomba as a socially cohesive community. And when you see those statistics and those reports, it is very easy to say that. But when you dig deeper and speak to the individuals that do see forms of discrimination, I think it's about awareness. That's the biggest thing, that maybe my generation are oblivious to it and naive to it. And it's about being in that box again and living in our little world and not opening our focus, which is what I'd like to do and spread across our generation as a whole, is to become aware of those things. And I think we can only tackle those problems if we know about them and we're aware of them. So at the moment, it's very easy to push those things aside and not see them and live in the bubble. But I think that if that answers your question, I think it's knowing, having even these types of forums where people are able to speak and bring these problems to the fore, where people like myself and Sophie, I suppose, may not be aware of them at the moment.
And a little bit further with what Mark said, I think he said it all in saying that it's exposure to these issues, and how he talked about at the end how when finding our call to action, sometimes for a lot of people it's the feeling of pain that takes you there. And I feel that within society there are so many issues, and we find sometimes it's easier to be complacent, like we said before, but in order to get action happening, we need to encourage people to find the part of each issue that's relevant to them and that evokes that deep feeling of that I'm not happy with that and that I do want to do something about that. And it's encouraging people through awareness and showing everyone that in so many different issues that we do turn our turn our eyes from, that they are relevant to everyone. So I feel it's awareness.
Thanks so much, Sophie. Yes.
Hi, I'm Said. My question is to Mark. Same tie, same color. Mark, let's make Toowoomba, we beat Launceston next year, okay? So with this question, based on your last interview question to the interviewees, how do you plan to make the youth aware of what Pure Land College is doing, and how to connect them to Pure Land activities and initiatives? Thank you.
It's a great question, along with a great tie. I think that my vision with connecting with Pure Land, starting from the top down, so it's my responsibility there to, as president, I suppose, and leader of the group, is to make that connection and then resonate it through the rest of our member base. Again, it's about awareness. I know it's a catchphrase today, but a lot of people in our member base don't know about Pure Land and the wonderful work they do. Personally, I only really connected with these guys mid to late last year, being invited to another event that they were running, and they do some fantastic work, as I said. So, and one of those things I think is emulating what we do with businesses at Future Leaders. So a lot of the times what we do is we host an event at a business, and the business is able to spruik their wares and show us what they do and pass on a message. So I foresee that in the future, that Pure Land be given an opportunity, whether at one of our monthly events or at a separate event, or even as Future Leaders going to something that Pure Land are running, as an open invitation to all to participate and hear their message and see what they do.
Thanks, Mark. Yes.
Yeah, Peter Braben from the Interfaith Church. Mark and Sophie, there's a lot of wisdom in this room, and a lot of people want to pass that on to your generations. But we have a problem with connecting with it. Where's the best place for us to connect? Is it social media, or do we need to write an iPhone app, or do we use the apps on Facebook? And if it is social media, or if it is an app, which area should we be heading to? We want to pass on stuff, and you guys are receptive to it. So how are we going to do that? We're going to need guidance, because a lot of us aren't internet savvy. I'm sure one or two of us here don't have smartphones. So, thank you.
Look, I guess I'm two ways with that question. I'm a strong believer, particularly in a Toowoomba, a community like Toowoomba, that the most powerful form of connecting is word of mouth. I'm still a strong believer in that, whether it be through business or personal, or an event that you have that's on. I think social media is an offset of that, and it's only going to get bigger. So I think whatever the faith, I think we have to start looking at social media. I mean, we can bury our heads in the sand and not worry about it, but whether you like it or not, that's where we're based. We're based in cyberspace with all these wonderful apps. And so I know the university, for example, they have employed a particular position for a person just to do Facebook and Twitter, which seems crazy, but that's the way they've identified that they need to connect with us. I'm not suggesting that you employ someone to particularly do that, but that might be a start. And I think it's about talking to us and getting an understanding of what we want and how we like to connect. And I think social media, whether you like it or not, it's not going anywhere, and it's a big part of what we do every single day, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, and all of those. I don't think there's one definitive answer, and I don't think you can just go through one stream, because if you go through one stream, all of a sudden you miss all the people that are using everything else. At the same time, you can't use absolutely everything, but I think it's trial and error with what's effective, and just being open to it, and being aware of what it is and what it does and how we use it. So that, I think, as a suggestion, it would be connecting with someone like myself and Sophie or anyone else in our generation that is active and wants to get involved and show a leadership role, and maybe working with that person to get your message out.
Just this lady here.
Thank you. We were talking about, not acting, that we've become complacent, or perhaps complacent. And I don't want to seem like a negative Nancy, but what about, and I know that I've experienced it too, that complacency comes through fear because there are so many laws and rights protecting either the criminal or the other person that when we act, sometimes we, the person who's trying to help, receives negative consequences. And that can come through the laws, it can come through retribution from friends or family. I know a lady who testified against a person in a murder case, and now she's continually having to look over her shoulder because she's getting death threats, and cyberbullying. There's a lot, we were talking about social networking, but on the other side is that there's a lot of cyberbullying going on for people who stand up and say things against things that are happening. So how do you feel about that, and how do you think, or what do you think we can do to protect ourselves against these other consequences that happen through us being actively involved?
As to that area of topic, I think it's a really hard question that's relevant across time in every context. With what you said about cyberbullying, I think a really interesting way to think of cyberbullying is with some of the terrible bullying that happens through cyberspace nowadays. I know in schools we are educated a lot on the concept of don't be a bystander. If you see it happening, if you see someone if they stand up for someone and then it turns on them, that's your role then to stand up as well. And it's the idea of collectively working together. So the idea that with bullying, there might be one person who's being bullied and then another 20 who are seeing it happening. So collectively, if we work together, we have the opportunity to face up to these different situations where it's one person being marginalised. I don't know if that answers the question though.
Just to add to that, it is a very difficult question, and it touches a number of different areas. I think all in all, if you truly believe in the message or the fight or the cause, naturally people will follow. And I think if you're strong enough to stand up for what you believe in and promote the message you believe in, generally people will back you. I know the law can be a crazy thing and really push you down. But as a whole, I think if you do stand up, you push your message out, you have the support of those people around you, then you're protecting yourself as much as possible. You're not always going to, if you're the type of person that's going to put themselves out there and be that person, be that voice, you're always going to get negative feedback, negative comments, negative connotations, unfortunately. But I think if you stand by what you do and your morals are right, then you can go home at the end of the day and look yourself in the mirror and say, well, I've done the best that I can today, and I can sleep well and happy with myself.
Thanks, Mark. Just this gentleman here.
Good morning. My name is Narendra Pal, and I'd like to speak something on behalf of my generation. And I think that's the majority seated here. It's very easy to watch young people. They're so good in handling all these gizmos that you carry. But one thing that sticks in my mind is a cartoon I keep receiving on the internet again and again. 4 or 5 pictures, 6 or 7 kids sitting down having dinner. What are they doing? Nobody is looking at each other, nobody is talking at each other. They're out socializing, swimming. What are they doing in the swimming trunks, by the beach? What are they? I'm just reminding you, all right? Whilst we may have missed a boat for this technology, all right, we still communicate in person. At the end of the day, behind every gadget is a person, all right? All the gadgets you have are nothing more than aids. You must take into account that as you grow, you must also communicate in person, not through gadgets. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that as a comment, but I think we have had a wonderful example of communicating in person this morning, which has just been fantastic. Yes, thanks.
Hello, my name is John. I'm a member of the Islamic community in Toowoomba, and I work for a national law firm, not as a lawyer, just to clarify that, and I'm also a scout leader. I guess my question or comment, maybe it's a bit of both, probably goes to both of you. Mark mentioned before that, you know, the Gen Ys don't know much about the Pure Land Learning Centre. Well, probably being a Gen X myself, I didn't know anything about it until my daughters got asked to go and do a peace forum last year. So I guess in the community itself, rather than using business, is there a way that we can actually utilise community groups to actually spread the word of what Pure Land does in our community? From a youth perspective, there are interact groups, there's Rotary groups, there's Young Lions, there's Scouts, Guides. From an older perspective too, there are other groups like Lions Clubs as well. Is there a way that we actually utilise those groups as well as business to actually start expanding further in the community? Because for me, all I knew about the Pure Land was that it was just a bunch of Buddhists at the end of West Street. That's all I actually knew. I didn't actually realise how outreaching that this community actually was until I actually got involved a lot more last year. So, over to you guys.
I think there's a massive opportunity there for all organisations to connect with Pure Land, and I was part of a youth forum late last year where, and I think this is starting from the bottom up, where school kids, grades 11, I think from 10, 11 and 12 were given the opportunity to attend Pure Land and talk about these types of topics and how it affects them in their school and how they can spread the word amongst themselves. So I think the same can be done with no matter what the organisation is. It's just a matter of getting there and getting that connection, whether it be Lions, whether it be Rotary, whether it be whoever you are. So I think it's a positive message in that the school kids can do it, and I think they did it successfully, and there's going to be some good outtakes from that forum, and there were some fantastic ideas that were taken from that forum, and these were from school kids. So I think that can very easily be manipulated into organisations no matter where you're from, and I know the guys at Pure Land are more than welcoming to any type. So I think it's just about making that connection, approaching them and working out a way to do it.
Okay, I think probably one last question. Yeah, just in the front here. We'll make it two, if they're brief questions. But just questions, not comments, if we've just got 2 minutes.
Am I coming through? I thought Rachel here made a very good point, that in our society, it's very easy for things to go over our head. She mentioned all sorts of slights and put-downs and people being disadvantaged in subtle ways. And I'm sure that she's right, but a lot of these go over a lot of people's heads and are completely unnoticed. I know I have conversations with my wife where she's missed something, and I'm sure she could have them with me about things that I've missed. Could we devise some way of bringing the awareness of these subtle instances to general notice so that people develop a more acute awareness of the injustices that are done in society? Could we have some, like a swear box sort of thing, or a complaints box where people could go along and put their complaints in Has anybody any suggestion about how we could do this?
Look, that's a very difficult question to answer, particularly from, I guess, a youth perspective. I don't think there's one definitive answer. I think there's always going to be, no matter how large or small the community, I think there are always going to be those little injustices missed. That's just, unfortunately, the world we live in. If there'd be too much time would be taken if we could go by and get every single injustice with each separate individual. I think, as I said before, it's about coming out and speaking those and making people aware of them. If they fall on deaf ears, then that's another call to action to fix the problem. But a lot of these times people aren't aware of what's going on and those injustices and things that are happening, bullying, whatever it is. So it's having the strength to come out and making the community, making people around you aware of it, having that voice, and whether that's through council, whether that's through a forum, whether that's through an online forum. Making your voice heard in one way or another is how I'd suggest to tackle those little injustices.
Thanks, Mark. Yes.
I'll be very quick. My name is Sawan and I represent the Hindu Society, and I just want to pick up from what Doctor here has left and Ravindra and yourselves about creating awareness. I think we have taken education to a great length, and I'm a strong believer of education. We have to go one step further and actually train our children to take action rather than just create awareness. Yes, because in my culture and in my home, Dad will give us a piece of job or send us for this course, and when I go home, he'll do the audit. Right? And here, Hanif will be doing the audit very shortly, and he's got it here already, he's got an evaluation form. What did we think about it? So creating this awareness and picking up what they've got, rather than here, I was very surprised when I came to this country 20 years ago, that we have to send our children on camp to learn social skills. But they should come from home. We are forgetting that. We have to strengthen that part of it. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. We might, we're slightly over time, so we might finish up now. And I'd just like you once again to thank Sophie and Mark for inspiring, for challenging and teaching us. And I think just one key, those last two questions, it's key if we keep looking outwards and keep making sure that we're not looking inwards. So I think that's a key to it all. So thanks again.